Hi, fourth grade. This is lesson 2.6, fractions on a number line. This is a review lesson, so we're actually going to cover what we did in class today. So it's a flipped classroom again. I'm going to go over our lessons we learned today. I'm also going to cover a few things that you'll need to know tomorrow when we do part 2 of our lesson. So this lesson is going to cover the I can statement on your screen. I can order fractions and justify their order through reasoning about fraction equivalencies and relationships. Ugh, that's a lot of fancy words for I can put a fraction on a number line and explain why it's going there. And that's exactly what we did today in class. We worked with butterflies, and we had to place their wingspan data onto a number line. It's been a while since we worked with data, and so some of that was review. We spent some time reviewing how to do line plots. So what I did is I took a little bit of the data from our homework today and I added it to our screen. So this isn't exactly what our homework looked like, but you get the idea. So I picked 5 of the butterflies we worked with, and I modified our number line a little bit so that it only went 0 through 5. Our number line should look about the same in that it is including whole numbers, and then there are little sections or little line measurements in between each whole number. Now those little lines are actually very important to us because we're dividing each section, each whole number section, into little fractions. And so when we are trying to place our American snout at 1 inch and 1/2 inch wingspan, those little lines will be very relevant. So let's take a look. American snout, as I mentioned, is 1.5 inches in its wingspan. So if I want to place that data on the line, I'm going to need to figure out what 1.5 really means. Well, let's go down and take a look at our number line first. If I'm in the range of 1 to 2, because I know that 1.5 is in between 1 and 2, it's over 1, not quite 2. These little lines are going to tell me, because they've been divided into 4 sections, and they're even sections, that's important. So each section then is 1/4, because it's 1 out of a total of 4 sections. So 2 sections would be 2/4, and so on with the 3/4, and finally 4/4, or the whole thing. Well, I know in our work with equivalent fractions that 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 2/4, or the equivalent fraction of 1/2. So when I want to place 1 and 1/2, I'm going to drop my mark right at the 1 inch and 1/2, right there. Let's take a look at the giant swallowtail. Can you figure out where that one would go? At 4 1/4, or 1/4 of an inch. Hopefully you've zoned into the 4-5 range. I know it's over 4, but not quite 5. It's going to be 4 1/4. So I am only going to want one of these sections of 4. So let me grab my mark and I'll place it right there. All right, those are easy so far. Tiger swallowtail. This time it's 3 3/4. So again, hone in on my area. I'm looking between the 3 and the 4. And I want 3 out of the 4 sections this time. So 1, 2, and there's my 3/4. So it's going to be this third line. My phone's ringing, just a second. Sorry about the phone call. We just placed, I believe, the tiger swallowtail at 3 3/4, and so that's where that X should be located. I'm going to move them over just a touch. Something interesting I found is that when I'm looking at each section, when they're divided into 4, that 1/4 is this first line, 2/4 is this second line, and 3/4 is this third line. So 1, 2, 3, whole. 1, 2, 3, whole. Interesting pattern. Let's take a look at the pearl crescent. Now we're really getting tricky with some of this stuff. The pearl crescent has a wingspan of 1 5/8 of an inch. Well, my sections are not divided into eighths. They are divided into fourths. So it becomes a little trickier for me to think, where would this one fall? Well, there's two ways I can think about this problem. Since my areas are already divided into 4, it'd be very simple for me to double them up and just divide them one more time into eighths. So first, let's take a look at that. So I know 1 and 5/8 is going to fall between 1 and 2. And I'm just going to grab my trusty little line tool here, and I'm going to choose a different color so you can follow along with my markings. I can make 4 into 8 by dividing each section in half. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here is 1. I'm going to divide this one, and that one, and that one. And now if I go through and I count, I don't have 4 sections anymore. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now it's much easier for me to find where 5/8 would be. I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would be this marking right here. So let me grab my X and drop it up there. Well, now that we see it solved this way, maybe the second way I'm going to solve it will make a little bit more sense. In this second way, I'm looking at landmark numbers. When I look at the fraction 1 and 5/8, I'm comparing that to 1 1/2. I know that half of eighths would be 4/8, and 5/8 is just one little step above that 1/2 mark. So I know that my range that I would be looking at for where I'd be placing this X is going to be somewhere between the halfway mark and the number 2. So I'm going to draw a little visual here just so that you can have a better idea of what it is I'm talking about. So 5/8 has a denominator of 8, so I'm going to bring 8 onto my screen. And then let's compare that to our fourths, because that's what our number line is divided into. All right, well, 5/8, let's go ahead and shade those in. That's going to look like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And if I shade in my halfway line, that'd be 2/4. So that's just what I was talking about here. 2/4 or 4/8 would be halfway. Notice how 5/8 is just slightly above the 2/4 or halfway. Notice how it's also not a complete 3/4 marking. So it's not going to be at this third black little line. It's going to be in between the halfway line and that third or 3/4 line. And so that's where we found making our own little line in between those two is where 5/8 would lie. If one of those two ways makes sense to you, we're on a roll. All right, let me clear some of the information off the screen and get back to placing a few of our last butterflies. So we have one butterfly left, and that's the Viceroy. The Viceroy butterfly, this is just a test if you understand breaking it up into eighths. Where would 1 7/8 be? I hope you're looking at it right now on your screen. My markings are still there for you to use. It's going to still fall between the 1 and the 2 marking. And if I'm still using these eighth markings that I have on my screen, I can go ahead and count up to 7 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 would be this last green line, leaving me with only 1/8 left before reaching that 2 mark. So I'm going to place that X right there. Great job. Let's take a look at a few of the skills we're going to need in order to complete the second page of this worksheet tomorrow. We are going to be asked to compare the data. So how much longer is the Pearl Crescent than the Viceroy? So in order to answer that question, I'm going to have to look at my data again. So how much longer is the Pearl Crescent than the Viceroy? And I think this was written incorrectly. How much longer is the Viceroy than the Pearl Crescent would be a more accurate, because I want the bigger butterfly. He's longer. So the Viceroy is 1 7/8 versus the Pearl Crescent. So flip that question around. First things I'm going to want to do is write down my data. So the Viceroy is 1 7/8 of an inch long. Second of all, I'm going to want the pearl crescent, and that is 1 5/8 inch long. And I'm going to stack them vertically like this so that I can subtract them. Whenever I'm asked how much longer or how much more is something than the other, that's one of those words that indicate subtraction. So let's subtract them. What I really like is that my denominators are the same. Whenever my denominators are the same, that means I'm comparing apples to apples, just like we discussed in class. Apples to apples and oranges to oranges. I'm not comparing apples to oranges with different denominators. So here I'm taking away 1 7/8 and 1 5/8. I can subtract the 7 and the 5 and the 1 and the 1, and I can kind of ignore those eighths for right now. So first let's subtract. 1 minus 1 is going to be 0. I'm left with nothing. And if I subtract 7/8 from, or 5/8 from 7/8, I'm left with 2/8. If that's confusing for you, you're always able to draw out a picture that might help. So let's take a look at eighths. Let's fill in 7 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm going to take away 5 of them. So by taking away 5, I'm just going to use a pen and I'm just going to cross them out. So let's take away 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. How many are left? 2 out of the whole thing. So 2 out of 8. So my answer would be left with writing 2, I apologize, I'm writing this on my laptop, eighths. And if we're talking inches, if this was labeled inches, we could abbreviate, which ties into our language arts lesson today, 2/8 of an inch. Let's try another one. What is the combined wingspan of the American snout and the giant swallowtail? Let's look at a few of those important words, key words here. This time they're saying combined wingspan. Well, combined is one of those words that's going to tell me I'm adding things together. So I look at my data, I'm going to find the wingspan of the American snout, which is 1.5. And then I need to find the wingspan of the giant swallowtail. And if I look at my data, that should be 4 1/4. Again, I'm going to stack those vertically when I write them down. Here's my giant swallowtail. I'm going to stack them vertically so that I can add them. Let's start with our whole numbers. Remember, these are called mixed numbers. It's a mixture of a whole number and a fraction. So let's add our whole numbers. I have 1 plus 4, and that gives me 5. Well, if I look at my fractions over here, I do not have the same denominators. So right now you might think I'm comparing apples to oranges because they're different numbers. Well, let's think about this for a second. Since 2 and 4 are multiples, I might be able to work something out here where I don't even have to change and find a common denominator. Let me draw a picture and see if that helps me. All right, first of all, we're going to need half. So here is half out of 4. If I have half with a denominator of 4, all I have to do is add 1 more, or 1/4. If I add 1/4, I'm simply doing half of a whole, which is the green marks, plus 1/4, which is the one yellow mark. That gives me 3/4. So I am left with an answer of 5 3/4. I hope that makes some sense to you. This is what we're going to be trying to do tomorrow with some story problems. It's actually workbook page 44B, and we will be working with our butterfly data, adding and subtracting their wingspan data. If you are feeling comfortable with our I can statement at the beginning of our lesson of ordering fractions and justifying where you're going to place them, you are all set for tomorrow. So hope you have a great night. Remember your readathon minutes. Super impressed with what you guys have brought in today. Keep it going.